I'm just making this video today to say the Party Finder for Ultimates in 14 is kind of an interesting experience. There's a lot of expectations and a lot of things you should and should not do to guarantee your own success, and I'll explain a little bit more. When it comes to Ultimate Party Finder, it's pretty much that the community isn't that large compared to the rest of the game. There's a finite amount of Ultimate raiding players in that kind of box, right? The sandbox of Ultimates is a lot smaller than the rest of the game. And then you have to divide that sandbox up into different sections. You have the Uwu section and the DSR section and the T section, right? You have a section for your particular Ultimate. And then you have to further divide that section up by the amount of people that are on your prog point. You've got your DSR Fresh, you've got your DSR Phase 2, you've got your DSR Phase 3, you've got your Uwu Phase 2, you got your Garuda, your Titan, we're progging Inception, we're progging Suppression. Like, you have to have players that are capable of meeting your prog point for you to make progress, which is why a lot of the North American server players, they all converge on Ether to raid to try and increase their chances of finding people in their section of the sandbox, right? So you go into the sandbox, you go into Party Finder, you get into a group, and hopefully you can get players that can work through the mechanics together. Usually you do not. You spend a long time, and since these fights are so long, you spend so much time getting to your prog point, maybe not seeing your prog point, and it becomes a huge waste of time for you. And there's a lot of things that every player should be doing to maximize their effectiveness in these scenarios. So the first thing that you should be doing is making sure that you have grinded out the best in slot for that raid. It's not always necessary in some of the older raids, but just get your BIS, go to the Balance Discord, and get the gear that you need. If we find you in a Phase 7 DSR clear and you don't have your BIS, it's not socially accepted, at least not on the North American servers. We expect you, like most players expect you to come prepared. So bring your BIS. Don't leave it at home. Don't leave it in the dungeons. Go figure out what it is and go farm it. Of course, you need food and pots, no matter what. Food and pots are necessary. You can technically clear the older Ultimates without pots, but you need to be bringing food and up-to-date pots for the content that you're doing. That's non-negotiable, right? So make sure you got food and pots. Make sure you got your BIS. Right? Is that everything you need to do? Make sure that you're coming prepared. Don't be drunk coming into these Ultimate PFs, or everyone's going to get upset at you. You're going to get blacklisted super fast, right? Don't come like super high. Like, actually show up and respect people's time. Go in there, make sure that you at least understand the mechanic you're progging and that you're mostly solid on everything before it. Mostly, like 75% of the time you don't make a mistake, that's good enough. If you're like 50%, 45, 30, you're making mistakes like more than you are not, then yeah, you're not ready to prog that mechanic. You got to be solid, because these fights are grueling. You go in with a bad attitude, that's the other thing that's not going to get you far, right? You've got to be able to accept criticism. You've got to be able to accept people saying, maybe we should do it this way or do it another way. And you have to know the strats. If you aren't the person in the raid who understands what the common strat is, right, you need to work towards becoming that person, because the fact of the matter is most people in Party Finder don't understand what the group is supposed to be doing in these Ultimates. Most people don't, right? And in Party Finder nowadays, there's pretty much one approved strat for every Ultimate. It's your job to understand what that strat is and to be able to defend yourself when other people are saying, hey, you didn't do this. You need to be able to say, actually, I'm not supposed to do that there. This is what everyone's supposed to be doing. If you can't have that conversation, you're going to get a lot of people who are a bit ruder or a bit snobbier or a bit impatient in the Ultimate raiding community look at you and say, this person's trash, this person's doing it wrong, when really it's them who's uneducated about how the fight works. You're going to run into that all the time. It is like a daily thing in Party Finder where somebody thinks they know how it works, decides they want to tell the group what to do, but they're the one that's super wrong on the strat. They don't fully understand it. We've all been that person. I've been that person. So just make sure that you educate yourself on your strategy before you go into the Party Finder, at least up to that mechanic. Anything beyond the prog point can be considered new. It's general best practice to be solid up to the mechanic you're trying to work on, know fully in and out how that mechanic works. So you've watched a guide, you've watched a separate video from the guide, a point of view of someone playing your role in that position, right? For older ultimates that have been out a while anyway. And then you go in prepared with knowledge of the mechanic after the one you're progging as well. You should understand, generally speaking, what you're supposed to be doing for the next mechanic, but so that when you get there, you can kind of try to finagle your way into the right position. You don't just die within 5 seconds of seeing the next step. That's generally what people do to try and remain consistent. The other thing that people don't really understand, and this goes for statics too, is that when it comes to ultimates, hours equals grind time equals experience equals consistency. Okay, that's the formula. You need to be grinding. You need to be spending time working on mechanics. And if you're the type of person who likes to skip mechanics, you're like, well, I'm phase 6, but I know I could do phase 7, so I'm going to join phase 7 parties. You better be damn well sure that's true. There are some players who that works for. You can just study a guide and see it enough and say, I could execute that, and then actually execute it. It's probably about 1% or less of ultimate raiders that can actually do that without messing it up for everyone. So if you're going to skip mechanics, you better be able to do every single mechanic up to the mechanic you're skipping and the mechanic you're skipping first try consistently. Because remember, in Ultimate Party Finder, consistency is key. And if you want to avoid getting blacklisted on an already small community, you have to have a good attitude. You have to do a good job. And when you mess up, you have to take ownership. You have to say, sorry, my bad. People will forgive you and be understanding up to a certain point, as long as you didn't lie about your prog point, as long as you didn't join phase 6 on something when really you're not very good at phase 4. You usually mess up phase 4. You can't join phase 6 and still mess up phase 4, or else you're going to get kicked out. You're going to get blacklisted. People are going to avoid you, right? It's a social dynamic centered around teamwork. But it's not that scary. You shouldn't be afraid of it. You should just take responsibility of your part of the teamwork. So your part of the teamwork should be to show up prepared. Have good knowledge of what you're supposed to be trying to do. You don't have to be perfect. Just understand it in your head. Executing is a whole nother thing. That's what you're there to practice, right? You're there to get good at doing, not get good at knowing. Get good at knowing beforehand. Come with your bits. Have food in pots. Be polite. Be understanding. And understand the strategy. Those are all things you can do before you step foot into a party finder. And you should be. I think that the thing is that we're there to work together to succeed, and there's a lot of people that are a waste of time in these fights. You have people who've already cleared who don't take it seriously, people who have cleared on tank but they're joining on DPS in phase 7 but they've never progged as DPS. You have people who are drunk and just doing it for fun. You have people who are just doing it for content but can't perform well because they're distracted because they're streaming. There's a lot of different things going on in these fights that demand some level of paying attention, especially prog parties. So it's up to you to be that person that goes in with preparedness and respect for other people's time. That's how you succeed. That's why you have totem parties who have a lower clear rate than clear parties, because the clear party players who have been suffering in Party Finder are one, they're desperate to clear. 2, right, they've been putting in the hours. You got to put in the work to be good. That's how you get good. You just do it over and over and over, and you come prepared with good knowledge, and that's what builds consistency. And remember, consistency is the #1 looked for trait in an Ultimate Raider, Party Finder or not. You've got to be consistent. I don't want to know that you can do phase 3. I want to know that you've practiced phase 3 so much that you don't mess it up, that you won't be the person who messes it up. Because when you think about it, if everybody, the general rules, like everyone's understanding of someone messing up once, but if you're messing up 2, 3, 4 times, people aren't going to be understanding, and you're going to end up getting kicked out. So that's kind of the state of Party Finder. Don't be too discouraged. Just do your homework. Do your homework. Be a good teammate. Come prepared, and you'll be loved. You will be invited to Discords. You'll be asked to come back. You'll get friend requests. You will be kind of a celebrity in the Party Finder for that positive and preparedness to be able to execute, and for taking ownership of your mistakes. People really care about this stuff. They might not talk about it, but the results speak for themselves. So hope this helps. And please subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. All right, see you.